Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristen, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast. I'm your co-host, Kristen Sock, and I'm sitting here with co-host Ron Ward. Ron, episode 8 is humor in the workplace still a thing? More like, can humor exist without someone being offended? What do you think?
I don't think anything can exist without someone being offended in today's world.
Yeah.
I'm hearing comedians talk about they're getting more negative pushback, and it does seem that humor is under attack. I'm okay with humor being under attack in the in the right setting, but when people are just overly sensitive, that's kind of sad because I think we're going to explore humor in a unique way.
Yeah, we sure are. And I completely agree. So in today's episode, we will share personal stories of office humor, submitter stories, your stories, and data supporting the importance of ensuring humor in the workplace survives the era of the PC police. All right, Ron, give us some data.
All right. Kristen, research shows that leaders with a sense of humor are seen as 27% more motivating and admired than those who don't joke around. Their employees are 15% more engaged, and their teams are more than twice as likely to solve a creativity challenge, all of which can translate into improved performance. What do you think, Kristen?
I believe it. And the reason I believe it, you guys have heard me talk about the fact that I like to look into health and brain health specifically, but it really is science. So humor is literally medicine. When you smile, your brain releases tiny molecules called neuropeptides. This helps fight off stress. Then other neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins come into play. The endorphins act like a mild pain reliever, hence humor is literally medicine. And serotonin is an antidepressant. So stress is almost always going to be present in the workplace, but it can be actively combated with humor. And like you said, Ron, studies show employees will stay working for a leader with a good sense of humor 3 times longer than their humorless counterparts, causing their employees to gnaw on Tums and all of those other Pepto just to get through the day.
I got to tell you, Kristen, we released some neuropeptides in preparation for this. We laughed. We laughed so much, but we had so many technical difficulties that we needed a laugh. Trust me.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to give, maybe you could call this a warning. Maybe it's called reading the room. But here's some things. If you hear someone saying this or you have a habit of saying these things, it probably means your humor isn't being received very well. Yeah. How about this one, Kristen? But it was just a joke.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, I consider almost all of these passive-aggressive. Some of them are literally an attack, but most are passive-aggressive. How about this one? You're too sensitive.
That's popular.
Kristen has to say that to me a lot.
Yeah.
I like this one. Geez, I was just teasing you. I think geez comes out of the 70s.
Yeah. A little dated.
This one is great. This is the ultimate passive-aggressive statement that you hear. Just kidding.
JK.
You can say anything you want to someone like, you're such an idiot. JK.
Right.
Or how about this one, Kristen? LOL.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Now in the South,
ultimate.
we say bless her heart or bless his heart. You
I've
can
heard
get by
this.
with anything. That's true.
So that's not just a Texas thing?
I promise. It's
oh my gosh.
It's very rampant here in South Carolina. But back to
Okay.
LOL. I've got a funny story. Yeah. Believe it or not, the origin of LOL is lots of love. And somehow it became laughing out loud. So I have a friend, her father, who was in his 70s, gets on Facebook. He's pretty proud of himself. And a neighbor's husband had died. And he sent something to the effect, sorry your husband died, LOL.
Oh,
and
geez.
she was kind of monitoring him. She's kind of proud of him, but then she reads that statement. And she eventually goes to his house like, Dad, you got to delete that. And he's like, no, it meant lots of love for me. Like he was thinking it's based on what the sender thinks. So anyway.
Oh my goodness. Such is life, right? We're just going to go, however you interpret it, that doesn't matter. It's how I feel about it.
Exactly. LOL.
Oh boy.
And then this one is, again, more demeaning. It's, you just take everything too seriously. And so if you find yourself having to say that, you're probably either joking inappropriately or joking with the wrong person. So maybe evaluate.
I'd say. Yeah, those are good. And I've definitely heard that in the workplace before. Not coming from me, but I've heard others say that. So there are some things that are completely off the table. And I just want to say, in today's world, understanding what is and isn't appropriate humor-wise is critical to, remain employed, quite frankly. We're going to help you out with that. So these are things you want to avoid at all costs. And believe me, it should just be common knowledge, but it still is not. So let's go there. You want to avoid jokes about sex, religion, stereotypes, politics, and pretty much anything else that may be inappropriate in the workplace. You never want to use humor that mocks or discredits your coworkers, clients, the organization, or your boss. Not a smart move there. Refrain from jokes, this is an interesting one, about topics and events that are still in the headlines or trending on social media. Your audience, whoever that may be, your team, your coworkers, may feel that it's too soon to laugh about them. That's probably where the same saying, too soon, came from. What are your thoughts, Ron, on what's too soon?
Oh, I wish I could give a time limit. The other night I was watching the news and they said Alec Baldwin, he was charged with shooting the producer on the set of Rust. They made some kind of a shooting joke and they said too soon. And I was thinking, well, somebody was killed. Maybe that is a little too soon.
Right.
So I think it depends on how serious it is. And once we've said this all the time, know your audience, right?
Yes, 100%. I have a last one, but I want to plug in dirty lesson number 78 because we talk about knowing your audience. And as a leader, that is critical. 78, a solid manager realizes that employees have different perspectives and backgrounds, but will find ways to leverage each group's gifts and talents and use those strengths to better the agency. And so that ties in. It's all about reading the room, knowing your audience, know your team. And if you have that information in your back pocket, you should know how to navigate the waters that are in front of you. Last one here, be careful about appearing too lighthearted when others are working in crisis mode. Your team members or coworkers may perceive it as being insensitive to their situation. And I know as a leader, I've been up against a deadline and my team, I've generally had jovial people on my team and I welcome that. But when I'm up against a deadline, I've had them, come to me with funny anecdotes and whatever that is going on around the office. But that was just the wrong timing and it did seem insensitive. And quite frankly, it was obnoxious. And so if you know somebody on your team or manager, even a coworker who's up against a deadline, give them space. That's not the time to joke around. And if you feel that they need some lighthearted joke or whatnot, ask them first before you go into, ask them to go in the office and get some coffee or something together. But don't just assume that it's the right timing.
Yeah, I was afraid, Kristen, you did your stand-up routine when your staff was busy. So that's good to know.
Oh, yeah. And we'll get there, guys. I did have a stand-up routine at work.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that. Kristen, sometimes there's a perception that the boss is not busy anyway. They have these images of the boss chilling out in the office, feet propped up, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that's the last thing you want to do is give an assignment or know that your staff's busy and then, you're the one interrupting.
Right. Absolutely. I want to ask you, because we talk about inappropriate settings, but what about memes and emails and email forwards? Do all the same rules apply when it comes to electronic communication?
That's interesting. Kristen, that's kind of a new craze. I mean, relatively new. And I think its prevalence has become more and more important. I think you better follow the exact same rules.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about The Office a lot. And there was one episode where Michael had forwarded an email. So he thought he was innocent. He said he was just the forwarder. He wasn't the creator.
Yeah.
I think people have to use a lot of discretion on those.
Yeah. No, I do too. And I know someone who was let go for sending inappropriate memes to his team. And it wasn't sexual in nature. So I think that it wasn't like a topic per se that was in my list here, but it was stuff that was kind of let's just say it was inappropriate because it was like horror movie type stuff, like really graphic memes and still completely inappropriate. So for those that think that's a gray area, don't go there.
Yeah, that's
true. So
true.
You have a personal story. We made sure that we were both equipped with some pranks that we've been a part of. And so I can't wait to hear what Ron has to share with us.
I assume this is workplace humor, but a couple of them involves pranks, and then I'll tell you some things that I did. But this one was one of my, this is one of my high-level pranks right here. So back in the day, Kristen, you may have never heard of it, but there was a little thing called dictaphones, and it had a little bitty cassette player. So we would put our reports on there. So it just so happened a coworker, I was a line officer, U.S. probation officer, and a coworker convinced himself that there was a third floor. There was no third floor, but he got it in his mind because he was hearing noises. So I actually knew you could see the government vehicle pull in out of my window. We called it the G-Ride. So when the G-Ride pulled in, I knew how long it took him to navigate the building and come up. It's probably 2 minutes, whatever. So what I did is I took the dictaphone and I pushed just record total silence for like 2 minutes. And then at the 2-minute mark, myself and another staff assistant, we started making weird noises. We flushed the toilet. We banged on pipes. We growled. We did it all. So anyway, so what I did is when I saw him pull in, I was waiting. So I pushed play, had the volume up. I climbed on top of his desk. It was one of those drop ceilings, that you could just push up.
The tiles, yes.
Yeah. So I pushed it up and I laid the dictaphone in there and I fixed the ceiling, and I go back to my office. Sure enough, he strolls in and it wasn't long. I heard him go, "Ron, come in here." So I walk in his office. He goes, "I told you there's a third floor." He said, "I heard a toilet flush." And then he goes, "Listen, there's pipes clanging and all this stuff." So anyway, he was 6'4", which made this even funnier. He got really close, not realizing he's right under this dictaphone. And I think I called his name and said, "You're such an idiot," or something, and he figured it out. But he didn't take jokes that well. So, it was really funny. I was laying on the floor. He was not laughing. I think it was about 6 months.
Awkward.
Yeah. You want to talk about too soon. It was like 6 months before he could really appreciate the humor.
Oh my
in
goodness.
that joke, but oh my God, it was so good.
It just shows how different people are, because I would have been on the floor laughing with you. But so I'm curious, at this stage in your career, were you a leader or an individual contributor?
No, I was a line officer. He and I think he started 6 months before me. I was about 2 or 3 years into the job. And we did a lot of pranks, a lot of fun. Things were a little different then, I will tell you that. But
so on that, Ron, real quick, I'm curious because I want to lay it out for the audience. So as a leader, are your pranks going to be, or should they be, more watered down than what they are when you're, just a coworker, an individual contributor, as I said earlier?
It's funny you asked that. The answer is yes, and I'll tell a quick story on that. The first day when I got promoted was on a Friday. I came in on Monday. We had this person that was so good with Photoshop. And it was just hilarious. There was a whole bulletin board. It was nothing racial, sexual. It was just, really funny stuff. But at times we had dignitaries, we had judges visit. You don't want a judge walking down the hallway and seeing that bulletin board, trust me. Right. So what I did is I went in early, like 6:30 in the morning, and I take every one of those down. And I put them in a folder, though, and I hid them away in my office. And literally, I guess 8 years later, someone was retiring, and I brought out that folder and I put it at the retirement, and people went through. They were laughing and crying because they hadn't seen this stuff in so many years. Now, some of the people are already gone, but that was really funny. But yes, as a manager, you carry more weight. Your words have more power. It's the nature of getting promoted. Right. So you certainly have to use discretion, but the manager can set such a great tone if you're appropriate. I can remember doing staff meetings or meetings in my office, and I'd start off with a little humor, and I could just see it made people feel better. It helps morale, like you've already said, and reduces stress.
Yes, that is so important. So I'm curious, when you did that as a manager, you go in and you're clearing the images off the board. How were you received? How was that received?
That's a great question as well, because some people did not appreciate that. And they I think they judge me like, Ron is large and in charge now. He's the new guy and he's taking down all the jokes. But, we were able to work through that for the most part. But Chris and I did want to share with you something that I did as a manager, since we were talking about how to water things down. I did a update every week, and I don't know where I got the idea, but we started doing Picture of the Week. Now, it wasn't always funny. Sometimes Picture of the Week would just be some instructor teaching, and I would say something very complimentary, or, so-and-so's looking buff, or she's so cool, all that stuff. Yeah. But a lot of it was humor. And what I would do is, if it was humorous, like we had this one guy, he was in an orange raincoat. He looked like a pumpkin. And it was just so funny because you could just see his face in orange. I did send it to him and said, hey, I want to put this in the update. And of course, you'd have to know him. He liked being the center of attention. He was like, absolutely. So if it was controversial, I would ask the individual. So this is where it gets good. Actually, the pictures were sent to an admin assistant who helped me with my weekly update. So she was acting real odd, and she said, I have a unique picture this week. I'll let you know. So anyway, she, along with another instigator, one of our instructors, they come to my office. They're just full of themselves. So they had printed it out. It turns out the pic they had suggested was me sitting by a pool with no shirt on. Oh,
my gosh.
And he had somehow done this color wave. So, you couldn't see my body very much, but it was obviously me. Well, number one, I'm shocked. I'm like, what? So it turns out I was moving, and temporarily I lived in an apartment, and this individual's sister lived in the same apartment. He's visiting her, looks out the window, and who does he see at the pool? But he sees old Ron. So I had to go with it, Kristen. I mean, what could I do? So I did say, I was spotted at the pool over the weekend.
That's
don't ask
hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that you just ran with it because it shows humility and humor at the same time.
Yeah, I wanted them to Photoshop a six-pack, but yeah. Anyway, I didn't get that done.
With that wave, it probably already blurred the sixer anyways, so you were left with 2 or 4.
And then I was going to tell you one more. I would do another funny thing when I would go. I worked out at lunch, so I had an admin assistant. It was really funny. I had another person across from me, an instructor. So when I would go work out, I'd always go, I'm going to hone the vessel. I would say, you don't get like this just sitting around. And they would always get a kick out of that. Like when I get back, they'd say, did you hone the vessel? And one guy, he was just a great guy. I knew it. I mean, he's just one of those kind, but he would say, did you hone the vessel, Big Daddy? And I would say the vessel's honed. So anyway.
Oh my gosh. And he knew his audience, right? Because you can't just go calling people Big Daddy these days.
He did. As a matter of fact, Kristen, this same officer, he bought, when I retired, he bought my book, sent it to his dad. And his dad sent me an email that was so heartwarming and so touching, and told me how much he loved my book. It was a great moment. It really was. And he's a great guy.
That's amazing. I love that. All right. I have a submission from one of y'all listening here, and I want to share it because it's hysterical. So this is a machinist. He lives in Portland, Oregon. And during the 2020 presidential elections, his boss knew very well which candidate he was voting for. So the boss made a sign with the other candidate's name on it and hung it from his truck under the license plate. And he drove around for 2+ days without even realizing it was there. And he actually sent me the picture. I wish I had it to pop up on the screen here, but it's hysterical. And so what I loved about this is, what he shared with me is, 1, he thought it was hysterical, and 2, it's one of the reasons he stays working for his industry is very competitive, but he loves his boss, and he loves that they have this type of where they can joke back and forth with each other, and it just proves how far that can go with somebody. Really cool. All right. What are your thoughts on that one?
Kristen,
I like that one.
I love that. I mean, I guess it depends how serious he was about his candidate, but that's really funny. Yeah. One time, I won't go into the details of this, but the site director at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, basically what we would do is we would literally watch the news in case there was some crazy incident that happened. So we would keep, in my office, I would have the news turned down low. So anyway, I went to see him and he was gone, and I went over and I changed his channel to an opposing network, let's just say.
Yes.
And I just left. Well, to be honest, I forgot about it. So it was probably 2 weeks or something, and I mentioned it. He goes, was that you? I couldn't imagine who would do that, because he carried, he had a chemistry and a authority about him,
Yeah.
So then he started thinking, I should have known it was you,
Oh my goodness. Was this like a Fox CNN situation?
That was a Fox CNN situation.
Oh, that
Absolutely.
is good, Ron. I like that. That's hysterical. I love even more that you forgot that you did it. Those are the best. You just kind of set it and forget it, and you're like, oh, yeah.
I'm glad I didn't lock him in a closet or something,
Yeah, that not so great. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, Ron, talk to us about timing.
Timing is everything. And not just timing. We always say know your staff, but, there are situations that are so chaotic that you can actually, some kind of humor is great. It just bails people out, but also it can be, detrimental. But I had this boss, and I was newly into the position, and we were in a kind of a legitimate crisis. And I forgot, but right in the middle of it, both of us, we're just silent trying to think of a solution. And she goes, hey, by the way, you having fun yet? And for some reason, it just, it cracked me up. And she would always do that no matter what was going on with us. She would always use some kind of humor. So, yeah, timing is very important. Like you said, the old too soon. But again, this podcast, this episode is about us promoting humor appropriately. We want you to be funny. We want you to joke with your staff. We want people to be happy at work. I mean, in my heartbeat, writing a book and doing all the things I do, I did it because I saw so many leaders and managers, supervisors suffering, and people trying to make other people miserable. So, I hope, even though we're going to put some parameters, that we can help do our small part to get humor going again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you do a lot of training and public speaking. And I know that recently you spoke at a medical supply chain conference. And I'm curious what opener you use there, because I know you change them up a bit, but I really like your approach.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. I had always hoped, because I think leadership translates. It doesn't matter if you work for the government or private sector, as long as you stay relevant and you stay up to speed with terminology and those kind of things. So I was asked to speak at a medical supply chain. So my opening line was, basically I was pretending I was at the wrong conference, because they introduced me as this federal law enforcement guy. So I got up and I said, now, supply chain, I said, so I assume we're talking about kingpins, mules, and the metric system, like how you weigh the cocaine and stuff.
Nice.
So anyway, it was just some blank stares, and then I finally said, no, I got you. I know where I am.
Nice. That shakes it up. That brings the attention in, and they're like, okay, this isn't just your average speaker that's going to put me to sleep. I like that.
Yeah, I definitely think to be a quality instructor, you got to have participation and involvement. About every 15 minutes when I'm giving either a lecture or doing training, I try to have some type of involvement with the audience. And then when people come back on break, I always go to each table and say, give me a takeaway. Give me a takeaway.
Yes, smart.
So, keeping people engaged is a challenge in today's world.
It really is. So I want to share something that's really cool that one of my previous employers did. So I come from a long history of banking. And so we would have morning huddles, and in these morning huddles, and this is not the awesome humor story, but this is the lead in. So these morning huddles are generally, as you can imagine, you're setting expectations, you're talking about behaviors that are going to get you to these results. Well, I start with a new company, and it's also a bank, but they did things quite differently. And instead of a morning huddle, they had a required daily motivational moment. And in this motivational moment, you were not allowed to talk anything work, no business, nothing. It was supposed to be fun. And I'll tell you what, it really took me a minute to wrap my head around it. As much as I love to have fun, I had goals to meet. And so to really buy in, it took me a few weeks. But basically, what it really did for my teammates, my associates, they looked forward to this so much. And it could be as simple as we would rotate who was going to be the motivational motivator, really, in this MOMO is what we called him. But It could be you're sharing your favorite quote. We could play games. We literally had someone do something where it was like, who can put the most marshmallows in their mouth? I mean, literally, this is what it was for.
What kind of prize did you get?
Yeah, right. Oh, my goodness. We had people bring in Nerf guns. This is all before hours, but it was just something everyone really looked forward to. And so when I ended up working in a cube farm, I was still a leader, but we were just amongst many, many other teams. So it was a little different than the branch environment. But what we would do, our motivational moments, we were in front of 50 plus people. And so what I started really noticing when I was working in the cube farm is that you got to do a lot of people watching. And so I started doing stand-up bits. Whenever it would cycle through to my time, my turn to lead, I would do a little stand-up. Mentioned that earlier. That's a legit thing. And so what I noticed was my stand-up was the first one I did was about hand washing. So, when you're in the bathrooms at the same time and you come out and whoever it is, you're at the sink at the same time, there's this like unspoken rule. You're going to wash your hands for that full 2 minutes that's recommended. And then I was always just like looking over like who's going to give in first, right? And you want to make sure you don't want to be the first one to give in, because then you stop washing your hands 30 seconds in and they're going to be like, oh, she's nasty. So, so that was a whole thing. And that's legitimate. You guys have to pay attention to people that are washing their hands right next to you. But the other thing is you want to notice, and this is something I brought up in my little stand-up, they don't wash their thumbs. So many people don't wash their thumbs after they go to the bathroom. I noticed that and I took note of it and brought it into my stand-up routine. But it was appropriate, in my opinion, because I was never calling a specific person out. Or a specific team out. There were hundreds of people working at this office, but oh my gosh, people were rolling on the floor laughing because it was relatable. And then people go back to the bathroom and they're washing their hands. I'm like, oh crap, I better go for a 2-minute situation here. What are your thoughts on that, Ron?
Well, folks, we said where leadership meets entertainment, and you just learned that you got to wash those thumbs. And I promise you, I will be washing my thumbs from now on. So, Kristen, I'm not trying to top you, but I was debating on this one. But I've got a funny story that I think our audience, especially if you've been listening this long, you deserve this, or you don't deserve it, and I'm going to give it to you anyway. But so, as Academy Director, you can only imagine all of the different incidents and things that happen with students. You may have 120 U.S. probation officers on the campus at one time. So I dealt with a little bit of everything, and I do mean everything. So I had security want to come see me, and they come strolling in, and they've got a folder. So they began to tell me that these students were putting poop, crap, dung, caca, in the toilet. I mean, not in the toilet, in the trash can.
I was like, what's the problem, Ron?
No, wait a minute. In the trash can. It gets better.
Oh, my
goodness.
They
said, you've got students that are not putting their waste in the toilet. They're putting it in a trash can. He opens a folder. They've got photographs.
Oh, my gosh.
Of the poop in the trash can.
Oh, my.
So I had a branch chief. She was in the military. And when I say know your audience, but I knew she would just be all over. So I bring her over. I'm as serious as I can be. I said, I need you to do an investigation. We've got a student issue. And I think you are the person for the job. And she was already shaking her head. She's like, what? And we did have a lot of names for it. The crap caper, a lot of names.
Gosh.
But she has to go talk to these students. Well, it turns out they're from a state where there was a drought. And before they left, you were only supposed to flush the toilet like once a day. So they were doing, I guess, what they thought was right. It was a state that's really large. And it rhymes with, it's where all my exes are.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah. I could sing a song right now.
Oh, my
so
goodness. Yeah,
anyway,
same.
She comes back to me, and we could not help it. We cracked up.
How do you not?
Anyway, Kristen, I told Kristen a story once before, and she's got a name for it. But
oh, my gosh, the Texas turd. Ron didn't say the state, I did. I was dying, and I'm glad that you told me beforehand because I was laughing so hard I wouldn't have been able to continue.
Honestly, I wish I could have pushed record. I'd never seen Kristen laugh like
oh my
like
goodness.
that. But
oh my goodness.
Now, let me put a warning on that. I knew this person in the military. I knew that would be, because to some people that would not be funny. And of course, she handled it professionally when she talked to the students, but she did tell them, you're in South Carolina, you can flush the toilet. Go ahead and let those things go.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I
couldn't resist.
That's hysterical. This ties perfectly into something I did, and I did do this as a leader, and I had a small team at this point, so the impact was minimal. Let me put that out there. 5 people working for me at this time. But I made signs with company letterhead, and it said, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. And I put it on the 2 bathrooms at our branch. And I only left it up for a few hours, long enough for everyone to go in and get confused and then come out smiling because they knew I did it. But y'all should have had those signs, Ron. Oh, my goodness gracious. That is hysterical. I have one more. Sorry, you got me rolling here. Okay, so this is another one in a bank branch. And this is one where we had a janitor who was not doing their job, to the point where customers were like, wow, your location is actually getting quite dirty, fingerprints all over the glass, yada, yada. It was very apparent. We weren't being picky. So we informed the janitor's manager, and we're like, we need you to check it out and see if they're coming in and actually cleaning, because it didn't look like they were. Well, the very next day, the janitor, everything's on camera in a bank, everything, everywhere. So the very next day, the janitor comes in, goes number 2 in the men's bathroom, purposely doesn't flush, and leaves, doesn't clean a damn thing. And so we come in the morning, and it's the men's restroom. So my banker at the time took a picture of it and then proceeded to show the assistant manager. And then they attempted to show me, and I was like, no, do not. And so the assistant manager thought it would be hilarious to email the picture to the janitor's manager and let them know, just so you know, we have camera footage showing they came in, left this, and left. And apparently they let us know that person quit. So, you try to hold someone accountable, and that's how
he went out with a bang.
He went out with a bang. That was the retaliation in the toilet.
There's so many puns I could use on that.
I know.
So, gosh, Kristen, this has been so much fun. We always say we're solution minded, but in this one, I think we put some parameters as we went. But I think, to recap some things, it's know your audience, know the timing. Is this the right time? Is it too soon? Know how busy your staff is. But also read the room. If you even make a slight joke to someone, they don't even smile. Body language will tell you everything.
Yes.
Or maybe someone's going through a very difficult time. And again, I always say that managers who are worth their weight in gold, they recognize that. And so please understand that you can help morale so much, especially a smile. No one's filed a complaint about a smile. And so, smile with your staff, enjoy your staff, try to make every day better. We only have one life, and you already are with those people usually more than anyone else in your life. So try to have a good time and laugh and smile a little bit.
It's science.
All
right, you guys. Well, if you have not subscribed to us already, please do. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. Also, if you want to watch and listen, you can go on YouTube and Rumble. And if you want to interact with us on social media, you'll find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We have a Facebook group that is very active. We hope to see you there. And we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be back next Thursday.
Absolutely. And Kristen, before we go, I had mentioned to you, we were looking at some stats, and we're generating a lot of downloads. As a matter of fact, we're about 300 away from getting into a very a good place,
Yes.
Where you get advertisers and all that stuff. So please tell a friend. Tell them if you do like it. It is a unique podcast. We went into this to be a little different, but also maybe learn some things, entertain you. So if you're enjoying it, please tell someone, download, like, all of those things, ring the bell, everything that, helps helps us accumulate numbers and views and listens.
Ratings,
so
too.
anyway,
5-star ratings,
that's
baby.
right. That's right. All right. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristen for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.